Well, hi everyone. It is fall. It is harvest season, or it's coming up on it. And I have some maintenance to do on this little critter. And this is kind of an interesting little machine, so I thought I'd make a movie on it. This is a windrower or a swather. And I use it to swath a little bit of organic buckwheat. I've got a whopping 19 acres, probably a little less because there's a 5-acre field that didn't turn out. But I've had this for a while. I got it out of Canada. They're a little more popular up there. And I have a pickup head that goes on a John Deere combine. That's a story for another day. But yeah, this is it. This is a 10-foot head. It's got a little like Super C motor in it. It's in really, really nice shape. But last year when I was swathing, it started to just not move. And it's all belt driven. And this belt was just sliding in here. This variable speed setup. So I have to figure out how to take all this apart and get it to come out of here. I got this belt too. This one was not cheap. That goes way down there. It's basically always in forward, and you drive it like a zero turn. Pull those levers into neutral. But I don't know. I guess I'll go over that later. But I'm going to start working on this. But I figured we'd probably not a lot of videos out there on international 230 swathers, so it's a little fun little thing to drive around on. Just kind of runs like a sewing machine, and simple concept. You just cut it and gently lay it in a windrow. You see a lot of these with like a roller underneath here to crimp hay. Then not too many of them have the draper head. So this looks similar to, old school hay bind, but it's not. But yeah, running out of daylight here. I'm trying to cram 10 pounds of poop in a 5-pound bag today, and time's getting away from me. So I'm just gonna start pulling stuff here and see how to get at these belts and put the new ones in. Okay, it's the next day. I spent some time getting this thing tore apart last night until I came to a good stopping point. I did it by lamplight because it was pretty dark, but this kind of reminds me of a Sesame Street episode I saw when I was a kid with Cookie Monster. Cookie Monster came upon a cookie, but it was in a box, and it was on a seesaw, and he had to figure out how to get the seesaw to raise the cookie up to the hole. Basically, he was using constructive problem solving. It's like a puzzle. This is a puzzle. It just kept taking things out, and finally you figure out, well, this is probably how this works. I do think I have a book for it, but can't find it. Anyways, I got the center jack shaft, I guess that's a snowmobile term, variable speed thing out, and got this belt off. And now I'm gonna tackle this one down here. It goes over this shaft, which is just a lever for the variable speed pulley, and it looks like I can take that apart there. Not exactly sure how it's going to work down there. There's a coupler there on the left side of that gigantic pulley, but there's not is not the same on the other side. So I don't know if I can get that out of there just enough so the belt slides through, or I'm going to be into more disassembly. So that's where I'm at. I had to take the gas tank out. The only reason I had to do that was because I had to get to these bolts and they were just right up on it. There was no way that I could take the nuts off, or the bolts out of here, I should say, and without moving the tank. So luckily it didn't have a lot of gas in it. There it is there. So it's back to some disassembly and then hopefully reassembly. I kind of noticed it looks like the head gasket's seeping a little bit. It always runs cool, but it did seem to eat antifreeze, or just, it always needed a little top off, I should say. That might be why. I have to put some head gasket in it. Head gasket in a can. I mean, it gets run 4 or 5 hours a year, so I work on it 4 to 5 hours and then use it 4 to 5 hours. Also, kind of like an old snowmobile. But the good news is everything came apart really easy. This thing has been inside forever. It's just never been outside. All the bolts came apart good, and it's been stored well, which is nice, and I'm trying to do the same. So all right, let's get going and see how we fare. This is the challenge I've got right now. I'm under the machine, and from what I can tell, this is the only place to really get this belt through. It goes around this pulley. That coupler here this one is splined, and that moves, but the shaft is sticking out, and doesn't give enough clearance. I took the set screws out of this and even tried heating it, but it just can't. There's no way to actually put pressure on it, and I'm not going to try to hammer it because there's no way to hammer it. And I'll break these cast iron ears off. You can see up in here. So I gave up on getting the old belt off because it's actually, I hope these are right, but I'm not going to bother. If this one goes in, the new one, then I'm just going to cut this one off. I was trying to get this one out, but I noticed that it's a little thicker than this one. And then it's, this is all rough and stuff in here. And that makes it harder to slide out because there's just more friction. So anyways, if I get this in, I think we'll be in good shape, but I've been down here for a while. This is miserable. I can't think of anywhere else to get this changed. I mean, the clutches would be tricky to drop down, and I wish this thing would move. There's, with the 2 set screws, and they had wires going through them. I mean, they got little holes in them. It's like if they loosen up, the whole thing's gonna fall apart. But it's not loosening up. So anyways, I keep pounding, and hopefully I can start putting things back together. All right, I did it. That was not much fun at all. Gonna try to start it. I don't know how well the belts are going to react to this because it's they seem really tight. There's an adjustment here. This whole thing slides up and down, but I am just going to start it and see how it goes. Now this is a cold start. Hope my battery's good. Choke lever's back here. I screwed up the paint on here. That really makes me upset. Putting the tank back in. All right, ignition. And this thing, you gotta have these pedals set. That puts it in neutral so it doesn't take off on you. Choke. There she goes. Battery's kind of wore out. To work. Basically, that center sheave slides back and forth, makes one input go, what was that? Makes the input belt speed up or slow down the output belt. I'm just dropping tools off the back. No big deal. Yeah, it seems to be working. It's got foot hydraulic controls. Yeah, that's good. Well, I think we're good. Let this run for a minute, charge the battery. I'll have to put my tools away and grease it. Much better. This used to be pretty loud in here. See, it's just spinning the clutches down there. Once it engages, it just goes forward, and you basically pull the lever back to disengage it. One side or the other, and that's how it steers. Got some special concrete blocks in here. Bet you can't order them anymore. Little ballast weight. Good little engine. Alrighty, back in the field, or heading towards the field. I'm gonna try to swath. Well, it's about 12 acres of buckwheat. Like I said, it's a 10-foot head, but it does, it goes pretty quick. You know, I can really run this thing at pretty good pace, and you know, buckwheat doesn't have a lot of mass to it, so it seems to cut it just fine. It doesn't take a lot of power or anything because it's just cutting it, windrowing it. So yeah, it's got 10 gallons of gas plus whatever was in it, which wasn't a lot, and should be enough to get everything down. I'll do my best to videotape it. It seems to pull pretty straight right now, but it is best to have two hands on these levers. You could basically just leave them alone, and that's drive. You pull them back, it goes to neutral on one clutch or the other, or you pull them both back and it'll stop. And then if you want to go in reverse, you just pull it even further back. And yeah, that's it. It's always a good idea to have your tire pressures in both drive tires pretty well spot on, because you'll be fighting it otherwise, just, you know, going across the field trying to keep it straight. So I'll get started, cut in, and once I feel like everything's working, I'll start the video over. I got about 4 passes around the headlands. I usually do 6. I had to take a bathroom break. But everything's working good so far. The machine's running nice. So why do we swath buckwheat instead of combining it? You can combine it, but it's an indeterminate plant, which means it doesn't terminate. It just keeps growing. So unlike soybeans or corn or wheat, you're kind of running a wet plant through the combine, and it makes for some miserable threshing. The Cornell book says to swath it, which means you swath it when there's about, I don't know, 70% to 75% of the grain is ripened, which is where it's black like this, and there's still a little bit of white left. It's almost mid-October. I don't think the flowers, what's left there is going to ripen. But you basically lay this down and you wait a week, and then you come through and thresh it with a pickup head. I also have a pickup head that goes on a John Deere combine that I co-own with another friend of mine. I might do a video on that just to wrap this up, but this was really about the swather. You try to clip just the heads off. There isn't much on the plant from here down, so you try to leave as much stubble in the field, A, for organic matter, and then B, it kind of lets the swath buckwheat sit up and, you know, not like lay right on the ground and just be miserable to pick up, and it gets wet that way, more wet than it would. This crop is a little shorter. I got it in late, and we had a lot of rain. It was a wet year, but it's not terrible. So yeah, that's why we swath. But in case you cared, a little information on buckwheat. But I'm gonna keep going. I do 2 more passes around the headlands, and then just start going back and forth like mowing a lawn. Well, I'm all done. See, I got a lot of windrows. 10-foot head will do that. Things didn't quite go as planned. I didn't videotape it because I was super frustrated, but this thing started to run really poorly, which is, it's never done that before. And it took me a while to pinpoint the problem. Of course, I only worked at this like evenings and afternoons after my day job, and turns out I think it was the fuel pump. So luckily I've got my good old nurse tank I built for the Massey combine in action, and I was able to finish up. The problem with the fuel pump issue was it was hard to diagnose because it was intermittent. It would pump like crazy. Like I would unhook it and crank the engine over, and it looked like it was working fine. But finally, the way I figured it out is when it would die in the field, it sounded like someone was just turning the ignition off. But what I figured out is I would drain the carburetor, or I'd pull the drain on the carburetor, and I would find out there wasn't any fuel in the bowl. So that's how I finally came to the conclusion it was the fuel pump. So I go get this in the barn, and before next year I'll pull the carburetor off because I think there's some junk in there. The sediment bowls were pretty full. I'll get some of those sediment bowl fuel filters, have the fuel pump rebuilt, go through the carburetor. I'll probably give it a tune-up with plugs and wires and check the points out. I've replaced the points and the cap and everything. Those are in pretty good shape, but just go through everything because I need this thing to work and not mess up. It takes about 4 to 5 hours to do what I need it to do, and if it holds me up big time if it doesn't work. So we'll figure that out, and that'll be it for this year. Thanks for watching, and hope you find this interesting. It's something a little different you don't see every day. And if not, well, we'll come up with something different for the next one. Nothing's ever the same with what I get into. Talk to you later. Thanks again. Keep those vibes positive. See ya.